Hey everybody, how you doing today? Just out here with my little guy, my little poops. Having a nice walk in the graveyard. Looks like it's pretty quiet out today. Kind of a chilly day. Uh, yeah, overcast. I'd like to start just with a quick COVID-19 update, right? Looks like here in Canada, our officials are making the right decisions, even the Conservatives, which I'm very thankful for. I'm thankful that there seems to be a clear consensus about what needs to happen. It doesn't look like the Conservatives are standing up and banging on the pulpit and calling for silly things like means testings or any kind of ridiculous nonsense. The only real actual kind of political news is the Liberals in the care package had put in like a 21-month period of time where they could spend and tax without parliamentary oversight. Which I don't think is them being nefarious. I think that they're just like, this is the way that we could do this. We could just go into this kind of mode of just like to speed things up and all of this. Rightly, I think people stood up and said, no, thank you. I think that you can work through the parliamentary system and you don't need these emergency powers. And so the Liberals very quickly backed off of it. Just because I think they sobered up a little and they just were like they were coming down, because they've got to be in quite a heightened state of emergency themselves, right? Like I know how I've been feeling has been very anxiety ridden. I can't possibly imagine what it would be to be at the kind of apex in the system's control and to be hearing directly from the health professionals and from the people who are on the ground. So I think here in Canada, everyone is acting reasonably, as reasonable as humans can be. I think that sure, maybe the Liberals had a little overstep moment, but I don't think it was them trying to seize power or try to become dictators or anything nonsense like that. I think it was just them seeing a solution, seeing a way that they could be more agile during this crisis, and then being told maybe not, and they immediately backed off of it. So I think good for all parties involved, I think. And it's nice to see kind of solidarity during this period of time. It's nice to see the abandonment of the ideology of abandonment here in Canada. It's nice to see that everybody seems to be kind of coming together and being like, yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? You gotta come together and you gotta work through this. And I hope that sustains itself after the crisis. I've talked about that in some of my other videos, so I won't go through it again here. Terrifying, seeing what's down in the States. Scary. We share the largest border in the world with the United States, and it really does look like their response to this crisis is insane. I mean, I don't really have a better word for it than that. It's this addiction to the ideology of abandonment, this ideology that's saying we have to every individual for themselves, abandon everything you love for profit. This kind of system of death that has taken over, and we have seen it impact here in Canada as well, for certain. And during this time of crisis, we have stepped back off of it. It looks like that we're doing everything we can in order to help everyone around us. But in the States, I mean, for God's sakes, there are people saying, just let it come through. It'll wipe out some of the elderly, you know, it'll wipe some of them out. But what really matters is the economy. That's what really matters, is the economy. I've gone through this as well in some of my previous videos, but very quickly, like when people say the economy, they think they're saying the system that supports the populace. But really, what's being said when they say the economy is the profits for billionaires, right? Jeff Bezos is the economy, right? People like Warren Buffett, people like Mike Bloomberg, right? They're the economy. When these people say we need to sacrifice millions of people, that's what we're talking about here. We need to sacrifice millions of people for the economy. What they are saying is we need to sacrifice millions of people for the wealth of a billionaire class that has disappeared during this crisis. They've gone to their underground bunkers and they've gone to their islands overseas and things like this. They're not participating in this. They're doing their own thing because their ideology of abandonment includes abandoning us. And because we share this border with them, and because it's scary to think that while we are attempting to do everything we can, the systems around us, while we are attempting to do everything we can, our neighbors to the south are literally talking about just letting it happen. And that's going to cause a wave through our society that it just is going to be terrifying. It doesn't matter how much we self-isolate. It doesn't matter how much we here in Canada do if our neighbors to the south do not attempt to do the same. It's going to spread. And one of the things that's been happening, and I've really been noticing it, is this reluctance in the media to actually discuss the COVID-19 virus for what it is, right? And to show it. There's been this real reluctance to actually show what this thing looks like, how it operates, what it does. And, yeah, one second. My little guy here, he's getting his hackles up. You're okay, buddy. Come on, buddy. Let's go. Come on, buddy. Come on, I know people. People, I know, right? Other people. Come on, buddy, let's go. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. Yeah, he's a scaredy cat. You're a scaredy cat, aren't you, buddy? I'm kind of a scaredy cat, too, you know. Come on. Okay. There's a good boy. He's just got to say hi to all these people. Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, hey, wagging his tail. I've never seen that before. That's new. He likes you.
Really?
Oh, that's nice. Wow. You're 1 in a million. Law of averages, I guess.
Oh, that's great. Maybe he's not going to like you anymore. Let's see what happens. Hey.
Yeah. Here's a good boy, buddy. Here's a good boy, buddy. Isn't that nice? Aren't you a nice guy? Oh, you're so nice with your little tail. Yes, you are. Little Milo break. Nice to say hi to the little guy. Okay, buddy. Let's keep going. And so they keep down in the States, they keep bandying back and forth, right? At first it's like, oh, we're gonna come up with a basic income like we're doing here in Canada. Oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And then they kind of go back and forth and bounce back and forth. And then suddenly, oh no, we need means testing in the midst of all this. Oh no, we need that. And bills get written and they reach, you know, they go through the House and then they get killed in the Senate, or they come out of the Senate and they get killed in the House, and back and forth it seems to go. And this is happening as the virus is growing and as it's becoming exponentially, it's going to be exponentially more difficult to cope with the longer you wait. And part of the reason why I think, like a poll was done recently here in Canada, 1 in 5 people still think that this is all being overblown. And I kind of shrug to that and I say, like, I mean, I guess there's flat earthers, right? There's anti-vaxxers. There's people who just don't care about evidence, facts, or anything like this. They literally will have to see it with their eyes. They'll have to know someone who has gotten it. And I've noticed that our media is being reluctant to actually show or discuss what this thing actually looks like and what it actually does, which I think is I mean, malpractice almost on the part of the media. I mean, the media's job, the role of the media is to inform the populace. And if you really want to inform the populace, you got to show them what this is, and you got to show them what it is they're dealing with, and you've got to talk to them straight. So from my own personal research, and it's completely incomplete. I don't pretend to be an expert in this, but I do think that I've done a good amount of research to know enough. COVID-19 is a respiratory virus. It causes major problems in your lungs. People die because their throats close, their lungs fill up with fluid, they get pneumonia. I read one particular gentleman who had been keeping a daily diary, and as he's on his road to recovery, he released it to the internet, and it's this very long, difficult to read. I had to skip certain sections of it because I couldn't handle it myself to read what he was going through and sort of the psychological horror of his experience while going through this. And sorry, there's just a little baby over here being very cute. As a rule, I don't film people without their permission. So when I do this, I show you my little dog. Here's a good boy, buddy. Come on, let's go. That the people who experience this, like the way it's being spoken about is like, oh, you know, it's got a really good recovery rate. You know, the rate of recovery is really high, and sure, it's got a higher than normal death rate, but you know, it's not. It's the difference between like 0.5% and 2 to 3%. Like shrug, people go. And they're not really understanding, and because they're not being told, like, what would actually happen if you just kind of tried to let this go, if you just shrugged and said, let's let it happen. So if you just let it happen and you don't actually, like, one of the major things that's happening is that there's a shortage of ventilators, and there's a concern that ventilators are going to be that there won't be enough of them should a crisis occur, an outbreak occur. We're in the middle of a crisis. An outbreak being like, right now we're just experiencing kind of a trickle, right? There's a trickling effect that's going on. Like 1 or 2 people get it, 3 or 4 people get it, and then they get it, so they need a ventilator, and then they get into a state of recovery, so they no longer need the ventilator. Then you can use the ventilator for something else, for someone else, right? And move on this way. But if you only have, let's say, I'm making a number up. If you have 100 of these, right, and your trickle through is like 50, you know, 50 people at any one time are suffering from this virus, then you're golden, you're fine, right? But what if 300 people are suffering at once? What if 102 people are suffering at once, right? Then you have to make a real decision, right? And you're basically telling your medical professionals, pick someone who dies, because that's what it is, you know? The survival rate of somebody who is untreated is more like 10%. The death rate is more like 10%, way up from the 3%. Which makes sense because your lungs are filling with fluid, right? You probably will get pneumonia. It's this hacking, constant, overwhelming coughing that overtakes your system as it's attempting desperately to get this fluid out of your lungs. So it's like you're drowning, but simultaneously as you're trying to get this fluid out of your lungs, your throat is closing up. And so it's this absolutely brutal experience that I wouldn't wish on anyone. I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I wouldn't say to anyone that they should that they should contract this sort of thing. I think it's just absolutely a vicious experience. And then from then on, you are compromised. From that moment forward. And we're hearing numbers from our health professionals that by the end of this, over 50% of us could have experienced this. Over 50% of us could end up in a state where we are hospitalized, where we need to be ventilated. This is a major major crisis, major health crisis, and they're not taking it seriously in the States. And so we have this real extreme moment where we're not, where we're trying to isolate, but the largest military body on the planet is kind of just shrugging and sort of going along with the anti-vax crowd. It's going to be vicious. It's going to be unbelievable to see. And during this time, like shifting it over to how we've structured our society, right? The reason why there is a problem in the first place, the reason why is because there's a class of shareholders and then there's a class of workers. And the shareholders and the workers are in an antagonistic relationship with one another. If you want to know more about all this, please go find the economist Richard Wolff with 2 F's. He'll really talk to you all about this. And really, what a great resource, and what a powerful message he carries with him. And the workers work, right, and they need to get wages, and the shareholders don't want to pay those wages, right, because those wages are lost profit for them. And and so this breeds an antagonistic position where the workers want to be paid more for their work, but the shareholders don't want to pay them for that work. That's the crux of all of the difficulties that we're seeing. Shareholders want to keep people working, right? Because it's workers who make their profits for them, the labor from the worker. But the workers don't want to be working, right? The workers don't want to be in this environment, this unhealthy, unsafe environment. And so this outbreak has really shown a divide, a clear divide that exists in the society between the people who don't work but extract wealth from the society, that's the shareholders, and the workers who do the work and provide and create everything for the society. And to me, like, I'll be as upfront as I can right now. I'm at this stage in my life a full-blown communist. And I think that things like seizing the means of production sounds about right. But I understand that that's not a palatable sort of position for many Canadians who have been indoctrinated into this idea that communism is a great evil in the world while they commit genocide and bomb people across the planet. But we won't get into it. And so I think we need to shift that idea, seizing the means of production, into a more palatable sort of a statement. Something that I think even right-wing conservatives could look at and be like, that's actually not a bad idea. That's not a bad reform to the hierarchy that we believe is the natural way to organize our society. And so the shift that I think I would like to see is that the workers should be the shareholders. This, to me, is a very important shift in the way that we communicate these ideas and the way that I think we need to evolve our society. It's absolutely absurd and ridiculous, and we shouldn't be tolerating that every time that there's some kind of crisis, the workers get abandoned, there's deep uncertainty, the shareholders walk away with their hoarded billions, and the gap between us grows ever wider. I just don't think that we should be tolerating the structure of this society and the way that it works, creating these antagonistic struggles between classes that we could get rid of. And we could get rid of it by making the workers the shareholders of the enterprises that they're in. Because currently workers don't really have a say in what happens in their work environments. They mainly work in top-down dictatorships. There's no democracy to speak of. If you're in a good business, you can give your feedback, but you ultimately don't have the decision-making power. That rests in the hands of a couple of shareholders, usually. And if it isn't a couple of shareholders, if it's a larger sort of shareholder class, then it's still well outside of your power. The sort of insipid counters to this that I've seen are things like, well, you should just buy shares in your company. Right, because if I were to accrue 1 or 2% of a company, let's say, which would be an aggressive amount, by the way, that would be a lot for your average worker to attempt to do. You would just be overwhelmed by the 30, 40, 50% share that a lot of these people have access to. And lots of companies, like what do you think is happening with these share buybacks? What do you think is occurring there? These companies are buying back their shares so that they can cease to be publicly traded, so that they can become these sort of large-scale, almost feudal institutions where they have monopoly control over distribution or over the production of a resource. And then they don't need to answer to anyone. They can just do what they think is right, which is why they're trying to dismantle the whole mantra that government is bad and government just needs to get out of the way and so on and so forth was so pernicious. Because these people, they want to be feudal kings and queens. That's their end game. They won't say it that way, obviously, but it is functionally what it is they want to do. They want to be unaccountable. They want their children to continue on their legacy, right? It's what they desire. And I think that kind of thing we've seen throughout history, it fails. It's a complete failure. And you see here during this COVID crisis that it's a failure. And it fails for obvious reasons, which is that the shareholder class abandons the workers, either by laying them off and telling them to try to live without getting any resources to do so, or by forcing them to work in the middle of a pandemic. Neither solution is equitable for the worker. And so the worker is kind of forced in this position where they either work, contract this with the high risk of contracting this virus, which is brutal, or they self-isolate and get laid off, and then they can't buy food and pay rent. It's a real no-win situation for the workers, unless we take a socialist position and say that no, we're not going to abandon people to the cruelties of capitalism. We're going to create social safety nets that are rational and function. And I think that we need to continue through with that idea. I think we need to carry through that idea to its logical conclusion, which is that if we are going to erect a series of systems in order to brace against the abandonment of the shareholder class, the capitalist class, then we need to eliminate the shareholder class. Or we need to merge the shareholder class with the working class. That the antagonistic relationship that exists between these two classes needs to be resolved. These two groups need to be brought together, and they need to be put into the same pot in terms of their desires and their ability to find solutions. And they need to work together. And the thing to do to ensure that actually occurs is to make the workers the shareholders. And that the shareholders, the current crop of shareholders, they can retire. They have their multi-millions. They can go off. Let them retire. Let them do as they have always done, which is not work. Use their money to make more money. But the enterprises they invest in and the enterprises they create, they should have equal share to the workers. That the workers should have the vast majority of the shares, and this shareholder class can have just as many shares as a worker has. I don't understand why we think having money is special or makes them suddenly this sort of untouchable, unimpeachable authority in regards to what should or should not happen. I don't really see, like, if you have a capitalist and his thing was, I have a lot of money, so I'll just invest it in what you're doing. Well, great, you get one share. The accountant gets one share. The lawyer gets one share. The person actually producing the product gets one share. The person selling the product gets one share. This seems obvious to me. That seems completely equitable. And as disagreements arise within that structure, they can be negotiated, and people and can be decided in a more democratic sort of process, as opposed to this top-down dictatorship that we all tolerate currently. Anyway, guys, I think that finishes me up for this one. I hope you're all doing really well. If you made it to the end of this, God bless you. Please like and subscribe. Not because I care about becoming like a YouTube celebrity or anything like this, but anytime anybody likes any of these or subscribes to any of this kind of stuff, it alleviates pain in my brain, quite literally. It just alleviates tension in my soul. Makes me feel less isolated, and we are feeling fairly isolated. Anyway, I love you all. I hope you're doing well. Have fun out there if you can. Good luck.